Hi, I'm Vittorio, and today I'm going to walk you through a presentation that explains how to build and deliver killer presentations. The content in this deck is inspired by years of experience working with different presenters, but also from a training course that I took with Duarte, who is the top design firm in Silicon Valley, and I learned a ton in that course. So here we go. So let's start from the basics, right? So, because if you're giving a presentation, you can really, if you do a good job, you can really take complex concepts and break them down in a way that people understand them. You can really tell the story. But if you screw up, you can distract, confuse, and you can really make the life of the people in the audience really miserable. So there are some things that we can do when we build a presentation to avoid some of the basic mistakes. And this is a language that I learned from Duarte that you can use when you build a slide to make sure that you're conveying the right message and the main point of the slide jumps at you. The first one is contrast. So if you have a number of different things on the same slide, the most important thing is the point that you want to drive home needs to be, standing up, need to be different from the rest. So that's one thing that you should look at. The other one is white space. There's never enough white space. And every time you feel like you're cramming things in and you don't have enough space, just stop. Stop and split that slide in multiple slides. We'll see later on. It's not important how many slides you go through. It's much more important that with the concept that you want to communicate really jumps. And the best way to make it jump is to have a lot of white space around it. Think Apple. When you go to Apple website, look at their products, a lot of space. From the box that contain the products all the way to the user experience and their website and so on and so forth. The other one is hierarchy. The thing that is most important in the slide should be bigger, should be at the top, should be jumping at people. What is the most important thing in this slide? Contrast, white space, and then hierarchy. And then unity. This is one of the things that I obsess about when I build a presentation, especially a technical presentation where you have a lot of concept. Always make sure that the same thing is on the left side of the slide. For example, when we do technical presentation where we have IT and devices should always be to the left or to the right. But once you pick one side, the users, the devices should always be on one side. IT, technical stuff, security should be on the other side. If you're building concept slides and the conclusion is to the right of the slide, it should always be on the right. So that after a few slides, your audience starts to become comfortable and familiar with where they should look for the most important thing or for the flow and so on. And finally, if the concept on that slide have a flow, should always be in the same direction, right? So if it's left to right, top to bottom, so that the user doesn't have to figure out where do I start in this slide? Where do I start to understand the story that is being told in this one slide? So I recommend that you print these slides from the slide deck and you have them in front of you when you build a deck and you critique every slide using this different concept. So let's look at some of the other best practices. Some of this is really stuff that everybody should know, but it's amazing to me how many times we violate these basic rules. So first of all, don't pack too much information into a slide. I take 3 slides with big font and less information over one slide with a lot of information. I see this too often, people doing that, and it's really confusing because there is a different format to do that, which is a document. So if you really have to communicate a long sentence, a long set of paragraphs, print it and just give it out ahead of the meeting so people have a time to read it. But don't put it in the slide. The slide is about telling a story. It's about making course grade points. Ideally, and this is a best practice that more and more people, good presenters are using, is 1 point per slide. Think about the presentation that I'm giving you right now. One thing per slide, one thing that you want to drive home in that slide. So whenever you find yourself authoring a slide, ask yourself, what is the one thing that I want people to take away from that one slide, and then focus on that and use all these techniques to make sure that that's highlighted. So this is an example of a slide that should have never been built. This should be a document or a set of slides. There's no way the audience is gonna follow what's in this slide. They're either going to listen to you talking, or they're going to try to read the slides. Your eyes are going to be all over the place, and you're just wasting their time and your time. You're not communicating. So look at this. There is text in there. There are images. I don't even know what. Oh yeah, North America. Actually, no, it's not even centered on North America. It's just not well done. Apologies for whoever built this slide before. Anyway, just not well done. And if you look for bad examples on the web, you're going to find a lot of these examples. Look at this. This diagram, there's no flow, there's no contrast, there's no white space, there's a small font. I mean, you name it, this slide has it. And of course, don't use small fonts. I've seen even great companies, but they are supposed to have great marketing using font 14 on the slide. Just don't do it. Why are you doing it? When you're doing it, something is fundamentally wrong with your slide. You're cramming too much information. And then if you find adding that information somewhere in there, you know what? People are not going to read it anyway. So don't do it. You communicate it, put it in the notes, or print a document, but don't use small fonts in the slides. Look at this. This is clearly something that should have been a document and not a slide, because there's no way I in the audience can even either read the fine print or follow what the presenter is trying to convey to me in this slide. There's a chart. There's call-outs. There's text, smaller text. It's a mess. The other thing is stick to the template, and Steve Reiko, our great designer, put together a new template that has a bunch of predefined slides that you can use to really have space and hierarchy and all that good stuff, so that you don't start to experiment with colors and you end up with things like this, where somebody really wanted to try all the fonts and all the different colors and try to create contrast with colors, and it's painful to watch. And this is really important. It's something that is a pet peeve of mine, because when I get pushback from people that get my presentations and then they use them and say, oh, there's too many slides. But don't obsess about the number of slides. If you build good slides with 1 point per slide and you bring the user along for the ride, it doesn't matter. So you can take a concept, right, and a number of points that you need to make. And instead of doing 4 points in one slide, you do 2 points per slide, or ideally 1 point per slide. And believe me, you're going to keep the audience more engaged, because if nothing else, they see the slides flipping on the screen. And the other thing is it gives you the opportunity to draw the attention to you, the presenter. Right? If you have very little information on the slide, then you can tell the story, because at the end of the day, people buy from people. So this is an example. This is a slide. Actually, it's not horrible, right? Whoever built the slide put some icons there, so that kind of convey some visual language in there. There are 4 points, but you see there's some numbers in there, some text. And if I'm presenting the slide to you, if you like orange, maybe you start from the bottom. And while I'm talking about record high partner generating leads, you're reading Partner Portal 2.0, and there is a disconnect. So instead of this slide, which is going to take you, 2-3 minutes to go through, build 4 slides. It's absolutely perfectly fine, and they will turn into something like this. This year, we had 12,000 leads generated with partners. Boom, I got it. I have a visual, attracts my attention, I have a big number, sticks with me. Then you move to the next one. And we had 2x the open rate. You have a visual that actually is contextual now, is an email, 2x that draws your attention, and then you can talk, you can make the point, and so on and so forth, right? So it's much better to have 4 slides with big font, a lot of space, nice flow, than 1 slide with all information crammed in there. And the other thing is, sometimes you cannot get away with complex information because it's a complex technical diagram or whatever the reason is, you have to have more than one concept in the slide. Then you need to segment the information so that it's easier to follow and bucket the information in the mind of the audience. So this is an example of a use case. This is actually from one of our sales deck from the past, where we have the challenge, solution, this font is probably, I don't know, 16, 14, pretty bad. So here's another way to have the same information in one slide, where you can say, okay, you use animation and segmenting to convey flow and have a better slide. So you have the logo of the customer, a little visual there. Then you say, what is the challenge? Okay, now we're talking about the challenge. Everybody with me, everybody's focusing on that, and they're not trying to read more. We reduce the number of text to begin with, bigger font. Then here's the solution. Now I'm focusing on the solution. I'm talking about solution. People read and then look at me, and finally the benefit. So here you see segmentation, use of animation, and then the benefit that sticks out with a different color at the end of the slide. And this is another example where actually we took a very good quote from the same customers that was lost in one slide, and now we made it a separate slide. Now you can actually stop and let people read it, and then you can comment on it. But now it's not lost in all the other text that we had in the previous slide. The other thing is use animation properly. Sometimes people get uncomfortable with animation. Animation are great tools when used appropriately, because it allows you to, again, take your audience on a journey with you. And they don't have to digest the whole architecture or concept at once. So this is an example where I can tell, I've seen this many, many times. I build up a complex animation to tell the story. I give it to the field, and they remove all the animation and just boom, they put it out there. And I'm looking at this slide, and I'm like, okay, so I have enterprise there, I have devices, there is a person in there, lot of lines, a question mark, what? And then in the meantime, somebody's talking to me, trying to explain all this, and I'm lost. The audience is lost. Instead of doing this, you animate it. And typically we do it for you in marketing. So you start from here, you say, hey, we got endpoints. Now you can start to draw the attention on what you're communicating. So there are endpoints, and there is the enterprise to the other side. But the enterprise is not really this anymore, but is really a lot of different cloud services. Now you're taking the audience along for the journey. You're starting to build that conceptual framework in their mind, so that every time they'll see this picture again, they know devices to the left, to the right in that case, IT and cloud to the left, and our stuff in the middle, right? And then you say, okay, now what is the problem we're trying to solve? Is that information goes into the cloud from the enterprise, but it's email, content, applications, and also the users put stuff into the cloud unbeknownst to IT. How do we solve this problem? So here's a complex set of concepts that we need to communicate. If you vomited all of that to the audience in one slide, it's hard to digest. You use the animation, easier. So don't be afraid of animation. Of course, you have to practice them. And my recommendation with animations is click. Just click and then describe what happens. If you're not familiar with how the animation works, and sometimes when you are presenting, you get a little bit of anxiety because you want to go. You just click, look what's happening on the slide, explain what happened. You are the subject matter expert, you know what's going on, so don't be afraid of what's coming next. Just you click and you explain. Don't try to go ahead of the animation, because then the animation really gets in the way. So click, describe what happens, click, and move on. The other thing is highlight the main takeaway, right? So we have seen this in previous slides, but this is an example we talk about, massive market opportunity, this and that. What is the takeaway? Our next phase as a company allows us to go here and there, whatever it is. So don't take this out of context. There's a bunch of numbers here. I don't want to be held accountable to these numbers if they go out there. But the idea is, if there is a call out, remember hierarchy, flow, contrast, white space. Be mindful of file size. So sometimes when you put a lot of images in the file, it gets big, and when you exchange it via email, it can get a little heavy. So what you can do in PowerPoint, there is a function. There is file, reduce file size for screen view, and that will reduce all the images quality so that it still looks good on screen, but they take less space on disk. That's a good tip that I learned. Also, the layout of the slide really helps sometimes tell the story. So, for example, look at this one. This is a slide. It's an okay slide, right? There is a chart to the right, whatever. I guess it means that there's numbers and stuff that goes up to the right, and then a bunch of numbers in here. This is a different way to show the same data. You basically say, hey, these are the 3 main points. leadership, beat the plan, efficiency, and then you can follow, you can take the audience on a journey. And if you animate this, now you go from this thing where you have visual, you have a bunch of numbers, to 3 steps. Leadership, this is what we do. Beat the plan, this is what we do. Efficiency, this is what we do. The other thing is, sometimes to be clever, we go and take some artwork from the web and then we passed it into the presentation and it looks ugly, right? Here's an example, right? You know, where you stretch it or you don't. And this also happens when you take a presentation that was 6x4 and you stretch it to 16x9, which is the new standard. So what you can do there's a trick. You can right-click on the image. If you just you change the format of the presentation, you right-click on the image, you go to size, and then you increase the percentage by either horizontal or vertical by 1%, and boom, it'll see that the image snaps back into the right place. So there's a little trick that you can use when you are moving slides. Otherwise, try to stretch it back to the original, because there's nothing that looks less professional than a copy and paste of an image that was supposed to make the presentation better and now looks like crap. This is another example, you know, that when you paste something from the web, 2 things. First, if you're looking for a clip art, always add transparent to it. So if you find the clip art that has transparent color already, you paste it into the slide, and you're not going to get the white around. But if you do get the white around, in PowerPoint, what you do, you go to Format, Picture, Set Transparent Color, and then you click on the color that you want to make transparent. That's, again, is the difference between showing somebody that naively and in a very non-professional way copy and paste the clip art to something that looks a little more professional. So we talk about that. So the other thing is line things up. If you have the same layout from one slide to another, don't move them around, because then it gets really distracting. Look at this. You have the title up there, then the next one is a little below, and then it's below again, and then below again. So one thing that you can do there, if you have modified things, you can go to Slide, Layout, Reapply Layout, and it will snap things in place again so that it flows better and it's not distracting. And then don't try to be smart with drop shadow, gradient, gloss effect. Try to keep it simple. The new normal is to really keep things simple and flat, and let Steve Reiko and people that understand graphics do that when it's appropriate. Okay, so that's a set of simple rules to build good slides. But then a lot of it is in the delivery. So let's talk about delivery for a second. So first of all, there's no shortcut to preparing for the presentation. Because if you own the content, at some point it doesn't really matter what slides you're using, you're going to convey the message. So prepare. Then customize, right? If you can, one thing that we're trying to do here is to really certify that everybody can give the first meeting pitch, because once we know that you can, then we're going to trust you to customize it for a specific customer or specific audience, right? So you can have, this is not a slide, by the way, it's just some guidelines when you are in a sales call, before a sales call, on how you go and really understand the pain points of the customer, so then take the presentation and customize it to the need of the customer. It's always fine. As long as you use the slides that we provide you and or the recommendation in this presentation, it's fine to customize. And if you look at the core set of assets that we have in the company, we have the first meeting deck, kind of like high-level presentation, what the company does, what is our solutions, what our customers do, what is our differentiation. Everybody should be able to do that. Then we have a second meeting deck that really talks about how things work. And that's a little longer deck, a lot of animations, and really talks about mobile application management and content management and really how things work from an architectural perspective. And then we have what we call the gorilla deck that has everything that we ever wanted to know about our product line and never dared to ask. And you can really use that for the technical meeting where people want to go really, really deep. The other thing that really is really super important, that you stand up. stand up, even if you have 2 people in the room, stand up, go where the screen is, and walk around and command the room, right? I hate when people sit down from the back of the room and present a slide all the way to the top. I mean, then who am I looking at? Am I looking at a presentation? Am I listening to you? So if you always sit on the side of the deck, so you can point things out and on the presentation and then talk. People buy from people. People want to hear from you. You are the subject matter expert, and you want to get the attention onto you. And remember, it's about you, it's not a presentation. At the end of the day, the presentation is a great tool, and the better you do the presentation, the easier it is to convey the message, but at the end of the day, it's about you. That's why it's important to prepare and then stand up and communicate to the audience. Walk around, make eye contact. This is a no-brainer, but too often I see people locking eye contact with somebody in the audience, whether it's the more senior or the person who asks more questions, and that alienates the rest of the room, the rest of the people in the room. So walk around, or at least look around. Make sure you pay attention to everybody in the room, not just one particular person. And if you're doing a presentation on WebEx, turn the damn camera on. The chances are that the person on the other side of the presentation is checking email to begin with, but if you have your face there, talking to you, you have higher chances that are actually listening and paying attention to you. To turn on that camera. People buy from people. People listen to people. They don't listen to a speakerphone. And finally, don't do this. Don't turn around and look at the presentation. Don't use the presentation as a teleprompter. It's there to communicate in a visual way, as much as possible, a concept. And then it's about you and your delivery. And then some small things, but important, is don't ever say, when somebody asks you a question, don't ever say, great questions, because it's a clear sign you don't have the answer. And so that's whenever I hear somebody saying, oh, that's a great question, it means, oh man, he's buying time because he doesn't know the answer, he's going to wing it. Right? So don't refrain from saying that. And of course, watch your well, you know what I mean, right? So that's kind of get annoying, the umming, and also try to avoid the right. Whenever somebody says right, I'm thinking to myself, well, you're the big presenter, you tell me if it's right. Right? So I know it helps us, it's sometimes buying time, but it's very annoying, and it's a sign of a non-professional presentation. Actually, at the end of this, I need to listen to my presentations to see how many times I go, And also, as I said, I don't like that, because it means like you already said it, so why you're saying it again? So avoid those little throwaway phrases and words. So we just rolled out a new template that I strongly recommend you use, because it has a lot of these things built in. So when you build a new slide, you can select one of the slides in the template and basically have a head start in building your slide deck. So like, for example, here you have the 3 points and the takeaway slide. We have the slide with the 3 cause and effect, the ones with challenge, solution, benefit, cause and effect, the top down, and so on and so forth. So this will be a great help, and we're going to make it richer and richer, so that you have a lot of different pre-built slides that will facilitate the process of building amazing slides. So with that said, as I said, and on the end, right? That's a good question. So anyway, this is what I wanted to convey to you guys. We always work to make our presentation better. If I look at the presentation that we have right now on Workspace, probably not all built this way, so over time we're going to get better. But as we make the presentation compliant with what I talked about in this seminar, we need also you to be able to deliver it, so that you don't get scared if you have 30 slides instead of 15, that you understand why we're doing that and why it's actually good for the audience. And any feedback, always appreciated. Let us know. We are really maniacal about communicating the message in the best possible way. And if you find better ways to do it, let us know, and we'll incorporate it in a future presentation. Thank you very much, and happy selling.